So good afternoon, everyone. So it's been a pleasure having you all here, and this wonderful afternoon. So we are all meeting here for a new program. So let us wait for I think a few one. Okay, Arun sir, like, are you available now? So can you start? We got a good set of audience here.
I'm there, Dr.
Yes,
Nadesan.
yeah. So pleasure, sir. So pleasure having you here. So you don't need any introduction among the pharmacology circle. I've been seeing you since my student days, but still, like, especially the host here with us. And this program. I want to emphasize here that this is a private program for a faculty development program, which will be next month. Which details, like, I'll be sharing the end of the slide, which sir also will be telling that. When he told about this program, I was actually surprised to have this kind of a new thing, which we don't know about that. So being a pharmacologist and being in healthcare sector, we should know about this. I believe exploring this field will definitely open up a lot of learning opportunities and skill-based training for many pharmacologists. So, without much delay, I'm inviting Dr. Arun Kumar. He's Vice Principal and Professor of Pharmacology at Chettinad Institute, Chennai. He's done his PhD also, and he has been a research a committee member for various research committees from MEOD. Like, I have a few lists, and he's been a very strong proponent of research at Chettinad. Very good speaker, very knowledgeable person. So we're going to hear from you, sir. Please take over.
Thanks, Dr. Nadesan, for giving me this opportunity to talk about this. Maybe, I mean, it's the topic as such. If you see that it is, or it may look like an engineering topic, but I hope this slide you're able to see, Dr. Nadesan. See, it all started from this, like, we have applied to organize this faculty development program with AICTE, and they have granted us approval to go ahead with this topic, computer assisted design and manufacturing. You know, in engineering sector, people used to call this CAD and CAM, and we have put it like its application in healthcare sector, like in diagnosis and therapeutics, and they have approved it. Now, this program we have been planning to do it actually in the month of June, but then due to COVID, we have postponed it. So we have planned it in the month of August from 9th to 13th, 2021, from Monday to Friday. It's free for registration, and we have to go to this ATAL. ATAL is, AICTE Training and Learning Academy, and they are sponsoring us. And in that, we need to register as a participant, and then we can access. There are so many programs, more than 500 or 1,000 programs available. It's all for free. Everybody, as a faculty in India, can enroll and can complete this program, and it's a valid certificate that they're going to give. So this program, I was sharing this with Dr. Nadesan, and hence he thought it looks like an interesting topic, and why don't we give a sort of primer or a brief introduction about this topic in this program. So I said fine, I can do it, and that's how it happened. Maybe I also request all of you, if you're interested. I mean, you can see here the topics are covered by engineers and doctors. Like, we have on this side a neurosurgeon, plastic surgeon, orthosurgeon, prosthodontist, and myself to talk about drugs. And we have engineers from Anna University and NIT Warangal, and then biomedical field, who are running few companies. And so we have seen that though it is not the core medical theme, but it's going to be really fascinating, how we use this 3D printers and additive manufacturing technologies in this healthcare, domain. So that's what is about this program. And I have few slides. I mean, I'll try to see that I speak extempore without running these slides. We were actually doing a collaborative project with Anna University, and that's how I think I came to know about this additive manufacturing. I mean, it's like, we have been seeing this printers. Like, we have our computers, and then we sort of give a print, and then it just we get a printout in the paper. Like that, I could see in Anna University that they have a printer, and they want to get any 3D structure, they could get it. I mean, I was very surprised to see that they are able to print a liver 3D, and 3D print of brain, and 3D print of skull, and whatever, I mean, heart. And upon interaction with them, they were telling us, like Apollo hospitals or cancer institutes or Savita, many of these hospitals, they come to Anna University for printing organs whenever they are doing surgeries, or in difficult areas like erythroperitoneum or some cancer surgeries. They want to explore how the anatomy is there, where the blood vessels are located, how to minimize the blood loss and go and do the surgery. For that, they are printing these organs in 3D, and they are giving it to them. Either as a solid mass or a flexible, this one with all anatomy, demarcated there. For example, if you are talking about, we are getting a 3D print of liver, it's not just a doll kind of a liver that we are talking about. You will get liver, you will get blood vessels in it, you will get bile ducts, you will get hepatic ducts, you will have veins, arteries, portal veins, everything is there with a tumor inside it. So if you want to plan how you are going to dissect that and how you are going to reach the tissue with this, you can plan a dummy dissection, like how we are doing in our anatomy dissection halls. Like that we can do it, or like in animal studies, how we operate, and then we get exposed to the anatomy of it before we plan a full-fledged surgery or something like that. So it's that actually made me to think of this program, application of CAD and CAE in medicine and dentistry. I mean, the jargons are very simple, and many of us may be already knowing about it. It's we design a structure in the computer, which is computer assisted design. And then whatever we have designed, we click a button, and then we get the thing out as an output. Like it is computer assisted manufacturing. Now we add so many chemicals, we add so many ingredients to get our product manufactured. Hence it goes with the term additive manufacturing. So these may be very common terms in engineering, but for us, I think these terms are pretty new to call them as CAD and CAM and additive manufacturing. In what way we will be, using them in future in our routine, therapeutics and diagnostics. That's what is. I mean, if you want to see these printers, I have few diagrams. Dr. Nadesan told me to have it more attractive so that people get interested, though this topic is not very much related to medicine. Okay, I hope you are able to see this one. Like you see that this is a printer. Okay, and for any printer, there is an input and there is an output. Our 2D printers, if you see, which we take printouts in papers, A4 papers, the input is the ink. The cartridge or the toner that we have, in which we fill it with ink, maybe liquid, maybe powder, fill it, and then we give a printout click, and then we get the fonts or the letters printed in the A4, and then we are getting it. It's pretty much same that here we have, except that they are 3D printers. For example, here they are printing solid organs. So you can see here the heart is getting printed. It's a very same printer that we see in the 2D, in our this one. I mean, you can Google it in Amazon. You are getting it for 10,000, 15,000. I mean, even for a 2D printer, we are paying about 10 and 15,000. Now they're talking about 3D printers for 10,000 and 15,000. And people are customizing their own dolls and toys, and then they are making toys, and then they give it to their children to play. 3D printer and this technology has come to that extent that you can, like we are talking about personalized medicine now. This is personalized toy manufacturing unit, kind of this thing that you can have in your house only. You have so many options available, starting from thousands to lakhs and lakhs of rupees. So you buy this printer, and you have so many raw materials available. With the printer, the raw material also comes. Many of these raw materials are based on plastics, and we'll talk about it a little later. So the input goes like the plastic material, and this printer takes that plastic material inside it, and based on the design that we have in the computer, it's going to print. For example, this is a large printer where a whole body of the human being is printed. Okay, you can plan whether you want the material only from the outside or inside also, meaning that, see, only the external environment, like you see here, it is a rabbit. So outside you see a rabbit, and the rabbit is there, but when you cut open inside, it may be simply a hollow. or you really want to have whatever visceral organs that are there in the thorax and abdomen, that you want them inside this rabbit also, you can do it. Whatever you design in the computer, it comes as the output. If your design has a hollow inside, then the output has a hollow inside. But if the design has heart inside, liver, spleen, or uterus, or whatever it is there inside, you can even print the lens in the eye in this. Okay, the whole structure can have it in that way that whatever you want to have it inside, you can print it. Everything is based on the design only. So whatever you design, whatever you draw in the computer, you can have it as an output, and the printer will look like this. I mean, because it is a 3D printer, it will not be small, but you can have little bigger printers. I mean, you can see it's maybe about 3 into 3 into 3 feet, about 10 square feet. You can have a printer, or you can have a room size printer also. Okay, you will have so many spokes. They take the raw material and they put it inside the printer, and then you get the output. I mean, many of us are already aware of how we do this 3D printing. Now you can also see here, we are getting the bones, spine, vertebra. We can print. Heart we can print with silicon. We can print with any plastic material. We can print. Now this, if you see liver with all blood vessels and bile, you see red color, arteries and veins, and then you have bile. Liver, if you want to construct it, you can construct it and get the printout. What is the advantage? You can easily locate the tumor where it is there in real time. I mean, many of the times when you want to construct the visceral organs of individuals, what we need is only the CT or MRI, scan. We just need to do a CT or MRI of the patient, and then, for example, you want to get the printout of 3D print of our own brain. We just need to do MRI brain and then give the CD to, the software is compatible to our CD. CT and MRI, it just takes the brain, and then you just click the button, you get your own brain. And people are talking about it. I mean, in case it, it is, we say that we are archiving so many things, like it is, archiving our own, anatomical structures in the soft copy. Like, you get it, and future we may have, problems. We may have fracture, we may lose our joint, and we may lose our shape of let's say nose, or maxilla or mandible. At that time, if you lose it, you cannot reconstruct it, and even MRI or CT may not give you the right shape of your maxilla or mandible. So if you have some other MRI done in the past, and if you have stored it in your computer, you just transfer it and you can reconstruct your mandible or maxilla in no time. How it's going to look like previously. Okay, so it's something, your fingerprint is getting saved, or your brain print is getting saved. Like that, your anatomy is saved. Okay, the biggest problem though is about talking about physiology, whether are we able to give the physiological function to this 3D print. We'll see it in the challenge. But anatomy is concerned, we can get the very precise structure of our own brain, or teeth. Teeth is something, people are conscious about their cosmetics. Even though we do it, people, our technicians, our dental technicians, they try to shape it up like taking imprints and then do it. It won't be like how you get in a computer assisted this one. And even many institutes, right from Savita, many dental colleges are having these 3D printers. The input is some ceramic that goes in, and then the teeth, that you have it, it comes as output, and then you fix it in about 30 minutes, and then we come out of it. Okay, and here you can see the kidneys, 3D printer. Now, what are the materials? Now, this is very crucial. I mean, we're talking about pollution, but many of these materials are based on plastics only, because you need to have something which is flexible. You need to have it as a liquid, and then or solid, and then increase the temperature, becomes flexible, becomes a liquid like stuff, and then you push it through minute drills and spokes, and then it gives the structure. It draws the 3D structure. It is nothing but painting a 3D structure. You have a lot of thermoplastic polymers. I know pretty sure that they are using many times polylactic acid. It is biodegradable. Okay, for example, if you keep it inside your body and then suture it in about 6 months or 1 year, the body takes it. And if you want to deliver something out of this 3D structure, you can use very well this polylactic acid. Okay. You have very many things like ABS, ASA. You have PET bottles. The same polythene that we use it to manufacture PET, polyethylene, terephthalate, or you have so many other things available. I mean, people who are experts in plastics and plastic technologies, they're going to give so many inputs whenever you want to design something and then get a 3D print. You can use a nylon, you can use composite materials like in dentistry. They're using it, hybrids, element, several things are available, soluble filament materials. The advantage of soluble filament materials is that you can just put it inside the human body, there is no need to remove it, like resins. Okay, so these are 3D printing materials that, this goes as a raw material for you, and then you get the output for it. Now, when we are talking about bioprinting, now this is not, bioprinting that we are talking about. Okay, so all these are not bioprinting. Bioprinting is that you need to have a material which is biocompatible, not that biodegradable. For example, you may be using a plate, thinking of ortho, fracture or joint replacement, where you want to really customize, because right now the plates, the screws, everything is ready made, and then even if it is not going to fit in, you try to adjust it and then do the surgery, fix it. But there are hospitals who are having 3D printers like MyArt and so many other top end hospitals. They are having this, you would have heard it, computer assisted designing. They design it and they get the production done in no time. So you can use it. So what I mean to say is that it need not be biodegradable when we are talking about bioprinting. Okay, though biodegrading is important, when you are giving something, which you want it to disappear eventually. But there are, especially in ortho, spine, and skull surgeries, you want the implant to be there for a pretty long time, and you do not want it to disappear. And in that case, you can use metals and metal alloys, or ceramics, sometimes carbon compounds, so polymers or composites like dental filling composites. Those things you will be using it. I've given few technologies where they are using it, like fused deposition modeling is a pretty common method that they are using it. The printer is going to be like this, and then it gives it constructs the material or the output like this. You have several, like inkjet, like the same inkjet printer that we used to take printouts in our papers. You have a printer like this, and then it's going to give you a 3D structure. Like this is what I was talking about. What is the advantage of this 3D printing in orthopedics? Okay, if you have a CT of a fracture site, we just give it to this designers, and they get a plate or a screw which is pretty much going to be suitable for that particular place, and you get the output in 10-15 minutes time, and then you do the surgery and then you fix it. You will have the maximum approximation, and you will also retain, because of maximum and good quality approximation, good functionality also. You see here the skull bone defect, is getting a material which is fixed here, and this is for I think pelvis. You have a fracture, and then you design a structure to fix this, and then you put it, and this is for fingers, and this is what I was talking about, joint replacement. You customize it for the bone, because everybody is unique, everybody is different, and something which is going to fit into somebody may not fit into somebody else. And see, it is the very advanced stage of personalized medicine. When we talk about personalized medicine, we always talk about gene. Gene is only for functionality, you can make it personalized, but in terms of anatomy, in terms of morphology, in terms of cosmetics, I think this CAD and CAM is going to give the precision like that you cannot have it in anything else. Okay, and Dr. Nadesan was talking about stem cell printing. You can use stem cell, and the input for a 3D printer is a stem cell here. Okay, fascinating though. We may be thinking that we click a button, we may get kidney, we may get heart. It is theoretically possible, but anatomically, yes, it is possible. But then, are we able to give physiology to it? Yes, it is a stem cell. We anticipate that it's going to function, but that's where I think the research is happening, and many people are trying to invest huge amount of money to get this 3D printing of stem cells, pluripotent stem cells, to get the neural tissue, to get the myocardial tissue, to get the bone. Can you imagine, like you have a limb which is getting reproduced, okay, with bone, with muscle, soft tissue, okay? And can you imagine, like people who are having transection, spinal cord cut, and then paraplegia, and can you give them spinal cord through this stem cell, and you're printing the spinal cord? The advantage of this 3D printing is that you can give exactly the same anatomy to the tissue. There is no trimming, there is no cutting it out, there is no refinement that you need to do later. If you are able to give the functionality to these anatomical structures that you are manufacturing through this 3D printers with stem cells, I think if somebody is going to give physiology, it gives. There are literature, there are articles that talk about giving physiological function to all these things. Blood vessels, you are able to get an endothelium and then fix it, and then it supplies blood. Okay, I mean, whenever you are doing, you know, a CABG, you can get such blood vessels, and then you can, you know, very nicely do this bypass. And solid organs, you can get it, like liver, kidney, any organ that you want to. Brain, can you imagine, like you have a brain mapping in your MRI, and in case if you have advanced Alzheimer's disease, you print your brain and then give functionality to it, and then you cut your brain and then replace it with this, brain that is manufactured with this additive manufacturing. Okay, it looks really fascinating, but that's where we are heading towards. I mean, maybe down the line in about 100 years, in 200 years. I mean, who knows? You may have such a thing, like, you know, people who are having Alzheimer's can have, you know, additive manufacturing of their own brains. Now, how do we get anatomy? We know that, you know, you can get MRI and you can get, I mean, you won't believe that you get a brain exactly. You know, even the number of sulci, number of gyri, you know, inside where all blood vessels you have, and in the blood vessels, if you have atherosclerosis, you can also manufacture a blood vessel in which atherosclerosis is there. Okay, to that extent, I think the precision is happening in this 3D printing, and the future looks very fascinating. Okay, now talking about pharma products, I mean, what is it? I mean, I know that many of you will be, I think, expecting me to talk about how we design a drug in this. I'm not talking about drug designing here, because drug designing already people are doing in computers. Now, this CAD and CAM is not about how we design a drug, though we can design, because already it is happening in bioinformatics, and you know, designing a structure of a drug and how to manufacture it. You have medicinal chemistry. Any compound that you design in a computer, and you can design the pathway, and the pathway you can fix it in the computer and then add the raw material, like how I was talking about this. You know, any drug, imagination, you want to fix a carbon here, hydrogen there, oxygen here, nitrogen there, and you want to get an organic compound and you want to test it as a drug. Okay, and you design it in a computer. Okay, you have software which will give you a pathway for it, and then you get the raw materials. I mean, people are experts now to get the chemicals that which they want to manufacture. They can always manufacture. I mean, everything is there. So I'm not going to talk about how we manufacture a drug or how we design a drug. Okay, I'm going to talk about in what way this 3D printing is going to make a huge impact on our routine, drugs. For example, if you see here, we have active pharmaceutical ingredients and we have excipients. Now, our traditional, drug deliveries, nothing but tablets and capsules and injections. We mill it and then we sieve it and then we add an excipient with it and then we make a formulation and then we make granulation, then you mix it and then you compress it and coat it in case if it is a coated tablet, and then you get a tablet and pack it and then supply it. Now, this is where we have machines, we have equipments. We add raw materials and you get a tablet. But then once you make a 500 milligram tablet, that's all. You want to make it a 450 milligram tablet out of it, it's not permitted right now. Okay, maybe you get 500, maybe you get 200, 250 milligrams. That's all it is done, and then we need to take it. Now, this is the traditional process of pharma products. Now, when we talk about 3D printing, you will have a raw material. For example, this active pharmaceutical ingredient and excipient mixed together, coming to you as a rod or as a raw material to you. Now that you push it through a 3D printer and then you get a tablet customized for a particular patient. If you want to manufacture 500 milligram, you press it, you will get 500 milligram tablet. You want to get 450 milligrams, you press it, you get 450 milligrams. Okay. So this is how I think 3D printing is going to really make a huge impact. For example, you will have a pre-mixed API and excipient ready, and then through some equipment, you call it a 3D printer or you call it anything, a pharma printer, whatever it is. You push it, you fix it in the program, whatever dose you want it, you just fix it. Like we go to ice cream parlors, they or a juice shop, they fix the amount, they press it, you get 100 ml of orange juice. They press it 150 ml of orange juice. Coffee vending machine, the kind of it you can imagine, like it's a vending machine that you have it in your own clinic, and you have a raw material worth some thousands of rupees, and then we are actually in a way we are going back to dispensing. In our pharmacology labs we used to do this, mixing powders and preparing creams and all. Like you can think of it in that way, like you are customizing it to the patient needs. You are fixing the dose for a patient who is in need of it. You may be unnecessarily buying a cream 100 grams which will last for 1 month. You want to give it to a patient only for 5 days, for which you need only 10 grams. You can give it through this 3D printing of pharma products. You will get it and then you will use it. for these patients. That's what is, I think, making, but something, right now, whether it is there or not, but theories are there, concepts are getting evolved, and I'm pretty sure that people may have it. You can see 3D printing of pharma products. This is going to be a raw material, like, when we do salting, you will have such a thing, and then, you apply heat and then you extract it from this wire, or a filament. You call it a wire, you call it a filament. Now this is a drug, and API coming to you as this one, and it goes to a printer wherein you get a tablet or some formulation in very different fascinating shape. Okay, can you imagine a tablet in a cylinder shape, in a cone shape, in a pyramid shape, in a prism, sphere, hemisphere? Children will be really fascinated. You can add colors to it. It becomes again, we always, try to please children with the way we add color and we make it appealing to them. When 3D printing is going to be in place in pediatric hospitals, you will not be wondering to see, such different, playful shapes of medicines given to our children. And theoretically, at least, if you see here, you can have a bilayer design. Bilayer design is already there. Okay, well, our glimepiride metformin is a bilayer. Right now, people are making it. And tablet in tablet, you see here, the external coat is blue color is one tablet, and then yellow color the other tablet. Tablet in tablet, concentric design. And one is sustained release, the other one is immediate release. Can you imagine, like you press a button, okay, you get metformin 500. Sustained release. In that, if you want 250 sustained release and 250 immediate release, you can have a tablet like that in a button click. And you can have 4 different formulations, 4 different drugs in one tablet. Okay, SR layer for drug 1, IR layer for drug 2, and IR for drug 3, and SR for drug 4. Okay, you just punch it, and all the 4 ingredients are coming, getting placed, and then you get a tablet like this. And then, IR, SR, and IR. All these things are in conventional drug manufacturing also is happening, but then with 3D printing in place, with the raw materials given to you, and you can do it like anything in your routine clinical practice. Okay, now I have a couple of videos before I wind up. I will try to show you in what way we will be using this 3D printing in our healthcare domain. The challenges will be though. Okay, vascularity. So we are talking about 3D printing, bioprinting. You get a shape, but then are you getting a blood vessel there? Is the organ is going to receive blood circulation? Manufacturing is easy, but then giving functionality is very tough. Because when we talk about liver, it's pretty easy to manufacture it. The anatomy, the morphology, structures, blood vessels, everything we can fix it. But how is that this liver cell will it produce bile? Will it do metabolism? Will it manufacture or produce carbohydrate? Will it do lipid metabolism, or will it get influenced by your receptor? That's where the precision goes to micro precision. Will it have a receptor for insulin? Okay, will it have a receptor for LDL? That's where I think the trick lies in. But then people are doing research to give it at least a gross physiological function to it, and to give vascularity, to give nerve supply. Because when we are talking about muscle loss, okay, we are giving tendons, we are giving skeletal muscles, but then without nerve supply, how is that the muscle is going to contract? We do not know. Okay, and biocompatibility, is there a possibility for rejection? We do not know. Okay, and infection possibilities there, being an external body. So these are all limitations that we have it for this fascinating stuff. But in spite of it, I think it looks really fascinating. Okay, to talk about it, or to get to know about this interesting subject of 3D printing, bioprinting in our routine healthcare. Maybe I'll try to take a couple of videos. Maybe in how an artificial heart is made, how it is going to pump the blood. People are making it or using it, at least in theory or at least in research. Are they doing it? Okay, I'll try to get this one before we wind up this session. Maybe we can discuss something about it. Maybe please allow me to take that I mean, most of these videos are available in the public domain. What I have taken is from, I think, YouTube only. See, this is, again, we need to imagine, like, there is a bone tumor. What people usually do is that they resect it, and then if they want to have, bone graft kept, they will keep it, or in case you want to fix it with, plate and screws, they fix it. Okay, or it goes for, amputation. You are losing it, and then you go for artificial limbs. Okay, but if you could imagine, like, this tumor is cut, and at the same time, okay, you do a 3D printing of what is lost here, the anatomy or the morphology, or you get a 3D printed material which is going to fit in exactly into this. So you are operating and then removing the tumor, and then getting the 3D printed bone stuff, and then fix it here, and then you come out it. In 3 to 4 days time is going to be all right, and you are not losing anything. You give function, you give morphology, you give mobility, everything is retained. Okay, of course, this is not the real stuff, but then people are doing it. So you can see here. I hope you are able to see it, right, Nadesan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Visible, yeah.
You have very many companies. I mean, you have companies which are doing it. If you want to have a cost-effective printers, you can get it. Stem cell printers, though, they are very costly. I mean, they are under research purpose. Right now, I do not know whether is there a stem cell printer. Yes, it is there. But then, are you able to reconstruct a tissue with the stem cell? Yes. But functionality, are we guaranteeing? We are not very sure about it. Okay. See, this is the material. I mean, if you want to get a bone stuff, I mean, there are a lot of patented materials and raw materials available. Okay, you can buy and then use it. This is the raw material they are having it to construct the bone, and this is the printer inside. Now, with the help of, let's say, MRI or CT picture, they could design it in the computer. Okay, what you will, I mean, exactly the bone marrow, and how it's going to be, the space, the vacuum, I mean, everything you can get it done. See, you can see here. So the picture is going into the computer. You can see here they're taking a CT or MRI. The picture is going to the computer. Okay. And then they're opening it up, maybe robotic surgery, or maybe this one. See, the idea, again, like they are saying it is to customize the bone cancer treatment, because we have been talking about, the moment we hear of cancer, it's not just the tumor tissue removal alone. It's the cosmetic part, it's the ambulatory part, it's the functionality part. There are very many things that are addressed. Though your anti-cancer treatment will address the cancer part of it, that won't give the functionality, that won't give the morphology. That's where I think these technologies are coming, and then giving us confidence, like, we can really make them functional like before. See, they are operating, and then they are trying to remove this tumorous part. And they use specialized imaging to scan the bone. You can see how the bone is like. And this data is going to the computer. And the computer designs CAD part, and it's going to get you the morphologically similar bone structure. And using this material, you're going to get that bone, and you trim it exactly to fit into that particular place where you have lost the bone. Then you fix it, and you come out of it. Okay. Now, this is perhaps happening. I mean, though it looks like graphics to make us understand what exactly is going on here, this is happening. Dentistry, I mean, I don't know, many of you would have experienced it, or in top dental centers, they have it. Right now people do root canal treatment, and then they take the impression, and then it goes to the technician, and then it takes 3 to 4 days time to get the teeth up, and then you fix it. It takes a lot of time, but people are doing it. Like top dentists are having the 3D printers. You go there, and then you do root canal, and in about 30 minutes time you get the teeth, and then you fix it, and then you come. Okay, we're not losing any time. Now this is a Maya heart. They have done it. This is made of silicon. The problem is that, you can see that it is working, but then it works only for 1 hour. Because silicon, when it is going to, that's where you will be wondering to see how our myocardium is going to contract systole and diastole for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. Now, these machines and these artificial structures, they are not going to stand it for ages. This will last only for 1 hour or 2 hours, and maybe for emergency where your heart is stopping, and then before you shift them to some other this one, you want to, for emergency sake, you want to pump the blood for about 30 minutes or 45 minutes, like that. You can simply connect it to it, and you can ultimately you need to take and then give it one arterial input and then one venous output. Then this machine is going to function, and then you will receive the blood. Okay, for emergencies, I think you can use it, at least in theory. Okay. Now how do you get this 3D printed heart? Is that the same printer only? The same 3D printer, the input goes maybe silicon or maybe some other flexible polythene, and then it takes some time, and then the output is a heart like this. Okay, you need to attach it with a compressor. Small compressors are available to make it contract and to suck the blood and then push it out, and then it is done. It's pretty easy that you can, in emergency, if you have some training, you can do it. Okay, if the heart is stopping, you can make it beat, or to get the circulation for about an hour or so, you can use this. See, you can see here, you have the major blood vessels, the inflow and then outflow things you can see here, and the valves also you can see here. It's a silicon heart, 3D printed, and a single piece. What is the meaning of a single piece is that, see, when you build a house, you construct it brick by brick. Okay, but in 3D printing, it is not like that. You cannot understand where it started, where it ended. There is no starting and there is no ending. It is a one single whole shape that you are getting out of. Okay, that's a single piece. Now you see here how it is getting printed. Like you will be really how this heart is getting printed. See, there's right and left ventricle and valves, and then major blood vessels, and everything is there. And you have a septum, and you see here. Just like real muscle contraction that is happening inside the thoracic cavity. They're demonstrating. When the heart is pulseless and it's not contracting anything, technically you see that it is a heart lung sort of a machine that we are talking about, you may think, but then for a short time, we may need to discuss about anticoagulant, the blood may be clotted inside, those things and all we'll have to handle it. They'll be having protocols how to prevent clotting of blood when it is coming and hitting it, all those things we'll be addressing it. This heart, I think, will contract only for 3000 beats, roughly for about an hour, maybe 45 minutes. You need to replace the material. You need to get it. It's a material, with which they are making your gloves and any ordinary plastic stuff. It's not going to be high cost material. Okay. In case if you really want it, you can have 3 to 4 hearts ready. Okay. And then in case if there is an emergency, we can just use it. We can also customize it. Assessing a danger, you can also pre-prepare for such things. have one more video. Now this is again, it is made with it's a patented product, biodegradable raw material, meaning that it will be absorbed in about maybe a year or so. This they are using it for closing the skull bone defects. It's used in craniotomies. Like it is intended for whenever you are trying to repair neurosurgical burr holes and other cranial defects. And this the point is that you are 3D printing it with the raw material. Now, this is the raw material that we are talking about it. Okay, this is there with the company. They are manufacturing it. They are selling it. Okay. Now, the advantage with this material is that it becomes vascularized, it goes for fibrosis, and then it becomes internalized, and ultimately these things are going to disappear, and what you will have is that only the bone tissue at the end of it. You see here that the blood is flowing, and then what is left is only screws that I think you will take it out. So these are the few things that we have it here. Now, I think Dr. Nadesan, I think I have tried to give a brief of what is happening in the 3D printing or bio printing I mean, it's fascinating, like in drugs. We can imagine, like in case if you want to give an anti-cancer treatment or anti-cancer drug inside a liver tumor, you can remove a part of the liver tumor, and in the 3D printing technology with maybe this polylipoic acid or something, with that you can add a drug and then you fix it, and then you can put it inside the liver and then you can close it. Now this material will slowly release the anti-cancer drug, and you can give anti-cancer treatment. In imagination it is possible. Okay. And also to customize or personalize the dose and stuff like that, we can possibly do it here. And in ortho, neuro, and many other specialties, wherever you have defects, you have the possibility of tissue defects, either a bone or a soft tissue or a skin or whatever it is, you can get it done with this 3D printing technology. Solid organs, you can get it done with the 3D printing technology. The only challenge, like I was highlighting, is that a stem cell, whether we'll be able to give a kidney as such, as a whole, or a heart, or if you have a small defect, it's pretty easy, you can cover it up with stem cells. But the organ as such, whether we can give it, whether we can give the physiology, and that's what is challenging, whether all the receptors we can give it there. Is there a lot of research is going on? Maybe time will tell us whether this fascinating science, a combination of both medicine and engineering, will it make it to that? Only time will tell us. So I think I've come to the end of it. I thank Dr. Nadesan for this session, and I also thank all the participants for listening to what I was offering on this particular topic. And all of you, I think I can tell you that if you want, you can enroll it in that faculty development program. It is meant for faculty, though PGs also can enroll it. It's a 5 days program. It is for free. We need to go to this HUTTL, AICT Training and Learning Academy, and then we have to enroll as a participant, and then you will have more than 1,000 programs. And there are very many programs which are really interesting. You can enroll and then you can get a valid certificate. Maybe if you're interested, you can enroll in this program as well. Okay.
I will share the brochure in the group now, sir.
Yeah, please.
So I have a few questions. If you have some time,
yeah,
can
yes.
ask. Okay.
Please.
The first question, so I'm going to ask from 3 perspectives. One as a student, and second as a faculty, and third as a institute administrator. So as a PG, how can I start experimenting my career in this field as a PG?
For example, I already have a few ideas. For example, people who want to do animal studies, let us assume, they're doing, I think, they're right away a few ideas. See, when we try to link this 3D printing and drugs, that's where our interest lies. We are not interested in reproducing kidney or liver or heart and all. In what way, being pharmacologist, will be getting into this one. That's where I think our interest lies. For example, you have input material. Is there any toxicity profile elicited for these input materials? We can study. You take a rat or rabbit, and you have a lot of these materials. You just fix it there. How long they are there in that inside the body of the rat or rabbit for 1 year, 2 years? In what way it affects the liver, kidney? Is there a toxic material coming out of it? Is it affecting the bone marrow? Is it affecting the CBC? You can get into research on the toxicity profile or the safety profile or tolerability profile of all these materials that are used for 3D printing, because your interest is to use it in human beings. Then I think most of it, I think you need to evaluate for the toxicity. So this, I think we can do it. Maybe postgraduates, they can have some interest on it. Second thing, we are developing drugs and then trying to deliver it. Targeted drug delivery. The precise delivery of a drug to the organ, solid organ. If you have imaginations like you have a drug and then you just want to put it in the liver, you cannot control the kinetics, because you fix let's say 1 gram and you want to release it for 24 hours, you want to release it for 3 days, 5 days, 1 month and all. It's not possible. The moment you fix whatever quantity of a drug in liver or in any other solid organ, it's going to be just a 1 single shot of the drug. That's all, it is gone. So when you want to time the delivery of a drug, when you want to fix a drug in a material and you want to slowly release the drug, then you can play it with the 3D printing. You have a raw material, you mix it with your drug and then make it some sort of implantable stuff, and then you produce an animal model of a tumor or whatever it is, and then you slightly operate it on, and then you take this, stuff that you are getting it from your 3D printer and then put it there and then measure the PK and PD. You want to know how you can, whether the drug is released or not, you can check the blood samples, or you get the tumor samples and then check it, the level of the anti-cancer drug in that or not. Or you want to see the response, you check the biomarkers. There are a lot of things. I think it looks fascinating.
So people can explore themselves. So
absolutely. And please remember that it's not a costlier technology. You can have a 3D printer at 10,000 rupee and then you can put it in your lab and then get the material and then do it.
I was about to ask it next. How much can one invest?
No, I was saying now the parents are investing on it to manufacture toys.
I think students have lost a fun element.
Because pharmacology, if you see that, I always see that it is a subject which is dull and boring and there is no charm in it. We are sitting in and studying some theory which we'll never practice, and then sometimes you'll be discouraged to note that what is the skill that you have learned it. Unless you make it playful, unless you make it with a lot of fun, and this one, I think we will lose charm in reading pharmacology and studying pharmacology and practicing pharmacology. Now,
I think somebody should do a short research where they invest some 10K in the machine just to keep the machine and just play with it. Don't worry about the investments. Just
really we can do pharmaceutical research. We can do, because this is an unexplored area. We can definitely, the regulatory point of view, there is a problem is that only the fixed doses are approved.
Okay.
There is no approval for, if you have 500 milligram, you want to get 450, it is not approved. So that is a regulatory challenge. Of course, we do it in research level. Slowly you will have data built, and then finally somebody will go and get regulatory approval for this particular machine and this particular drug, and you can make it any dose. Regulatory will give approval. Who knows?
Okay. So the next is how to collaborate with a clinician, because a professor wants to do this research. He or she may not be able to go and meet them. So they will send me a PG. So how can a PG or Department of Pharmacology can involve themselves in research with the clinicians?
I'm confining only to 3D printing, or in any research for that matter, where you have, we basically divide it into in vitro, preclinical and clinical. There is no need to get associated with clinician for in vitro studies. We do it in our laboratories or tissue culture labs or things like that. And for preclinical, we have our labs, and whatever ideas that we have, especially with regard to 3D printing, unless we do it in a preclinical setup, we cannot straight away go to clinical setup and then explore it. Unless it is already established, like the bone graft or the materials that we are using it, like, ceramics for dental or bones or plates, ortho, such solid implants that people are already using it, there is no problem. But when we are talking about drugs, delivery of drugs, unless we have some exposure in preclinical, we cannot straight away jump on to give it in clinical setup. So the point is that, first of all, we need to, our postgraduates or anybody for that matter should get involved and motivated to do preclinical, establish some safety, some efficacy data, and then we need to take the same phase 1, phase 2, like that we need to do it. With the
instead of meddling with anti-anxiety, analgesics, all those routine stuff, I think they should explore at least one PG per project. Something with that. Something may come out. Yeah, so it's a very good initiative, sir.
Like you were saying, anti-inflammatory drug. You take any plant in India and then you do an experiment with anti-inflammatory activity, analgesic activity. You measure some tumor necrosis factor and some inflammatory mediators, and then we come up with some dissertations. No need actually. Many people may not be doing it. Just get something and then do the data and then give a dissertation. That's actually useless. We are not learning much by doing those things. These things, at least if some of them are doing it, I will be more than happy. In fact, I am thinking already. What I have told is that I have already leaked the information which I wanted my PGs to do it. I have already told. It's an open sea. Anybody can take any material and then do it. PLA is something people are doing it very commonly for solid material.
I think if someone is going to start this, they might ask you, sir. And I know, you'll always.
And there is a lot of technology support, like IITs and NITs and Anna University, things like that. They're always supporting. They say that to print brain, they charge only about 5,000 rupees. For example, we take MRI brain and then we go to them and they give a solid brain.
So I think we have a good amount of input clinical data, which we can always collaborate. So I think PGs should move out to explore themselves to see that. And talking from a general perspective, where can one get a training for anything apart from your own this one? What is this? A CME. If somebody wants to explore this field, is there any fixed training to explore it, or just you can just buy and start it, self-read?
See, of course, they can always attend programs like this FTP or postgraduate level. There is always a training program, but we need to have hands-on. Hands-on is concerned, I think, engineering part, there are very many institutes available. But with regard to preclinical and this one, so far as I know, I mean, there is not even a big literature that is available that we can apply and then, follow it up. We just need to imagine and then explore it. That's what I would assume that, with regard to drug, if you have to manufacture something, we need to fix on raw materials and ingredients, and then we need to go to the engineering institutes, and then we need to get the implant ready with the drug. This is how actually they made it your medicated stents and all.
Okay.
It comes actually out of 3D printing only.
Medicated stents.
Medicated stents. Yeah, it comes only with this. So for other things, it's not so popular. But then, as a researcher, we need to only try to build it up. I mean, there is no precedent for this.
Okay.
We have to imagine and then we have to take it forward. As far as animal studies are concerned, only the Animal Ethics Committee. I mean, I think it should permit us.
Sir, I think, as you told, maybe if we can expect some hands-on training from your department.
Well, we don't have 3D printer. But
in case, like in future, because
definitely we are planning. Actually, we are trying to collaborate with Anna University because we have already another MOU. It is in the pipeline with regard to something else. So we are in touch
for someone to start that initiative. At least they can move to your department.
Definitely, they can be in touch with us, and they can be in touch with me as well. And we are there to guide or help them. And at the same time, we will also learn. It's not that we know something externally. Whatever I have spoken is only theory and imagination. But it's happening outside, and it's going to be happening very soon.
So as told, the investment is not so much. I think so from the institution perspective, there won't be any hurdle also. Even the own funds, the department funds, they can even start it. Sir, like my own personal question, how's about 3D printing and organ chips? Something we can play with it here.
You're talking about physiology?
Yes, physiology.
We
inter-department research. Yeah.
Pardon?
Organ on chips. 3D printing and organ on chips. Organ on chips.
Okay. We do not know how to translate the message in your chip into the organ. We really do not know, because when you talk about an organ, you can try to give a blood supply that you can give. I mean, you just connect it to artery and vein, you can supply. A nerve supply, structurally you can give it. The nervous tissue through stem cells, you can just make it, and then you can give it to the organ, and then you can make it. But then when you stimulate the nerve, when you perfuse the organ, whether it is going to retain the function or not, we do not know. And second, the organ has a memory. Maybe brain, maybe heart, maybe lung, whatever it is, based on your lifestyle, based on your day-to-day habits and all. Every organ will have a memory, though the biggest memory is with the brain. Even every organ has got a memory of its own. But how to translate whether the nerve supply that you are giving it? There are 2-3 possibilities. One, you just take liver and then fix it, give nerve and artery, blood flow. The brain will translate the memory to liver. We do not know. It's again imagination. Or you have the codes of genes of the liver that you have it, and everything is in the form of a chip. Whether are you able to translate it during the manufacturing process or after you make the liver, and all is something which is unexplored. For example, in this additive manufacturing, we are going to the extent of fixing every cell. That's where actually we are hitting it. Whatever I have spoken so far is about the macro. You're getting the liver, you're getting the brain, you're getting the heart. But when you narrow down to, let's say, liver, one liver cell we are going. What is a liver cell? Inside you have nucleus, you have cytoplasm, you have cell wall, you have gene, you have enzymes, This is what is actually a liver cell. Whether you can manufacture all these things in additive manufacturing, or whether you can give the genetic material which will do all these functions inside a hepatocyte. This is a challenge. So whether how to translate the message into it, the whole message where we have to transfer, or only the gene we just fix it inside, and you see cluster of hepatocytes, naturally they have to execute their job. We do not know. That's again something. If you have stem cells, we can print it instead of 3D printer. We can have we can grow them in a culture medium, let's say liver or something, and then we can explore the physiological part of it.
That's attending your lecture. I'm getting few thoughts for the PGs here because as a pharmacologist, we always think about drugs and drug delivery. Devices are also our forte, right? So we can explore some 3D printing devices, test on the animals, some processes. We always go for OA model by inducing some irritants into the knee. We can do some processes and see what devices, work with orthopedicians, talk to them about the requirements, understand the concepts. So I think a device field is like it's already opened up. I think as a pharmacologist, from the PG perspective, or even faculties, they can involve themselves as a PhD student. They can also re-explore their own career here. So I think like you're given a very elaborate thing and a very new thing for us, even though like the technology is not so new, because we are all so illiterate in this field, and it is so exciting for me to hear from you. And if there are any questions, then we can conclude, sir. I think the time is up. I don't want to waste more time because I know like you are very busy to catch amidst your like various hats, being a vice principal, like being administrator, being a teacher, and a multiple member of the committee members, institute committee members. So again, it's a pleasure for me to have you here, and I thank all the participants here. And we'll be doing multiple programs, catching all the experts in various fields. Any final thoughts for the participants, sir? We got to conclude. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nadesan, for this. I think to me again, it's a new experience. I've never done so far like what you have given me. Maybe we should also try to explore such a platform to organize such webinars. So this is a lesson for me that we also should be very proactive in such academic activities. For the participants, many of them may be postgraduates. I always will want to tell them like, don't take it like, we are there and then doing something which our guide is saying, you as a PG, as an youngster, you need to motivate your guide to, explore some unknown territories. Okay, so this is such a fascinating avenue, and if some of you are taking this 3D printing and then drug embedded implants or solid structures, and then their PK and PD, and then safety and toxicity, I'll be more than happy. And if you have anything interesting to share with me, you can get my details from Dr. Nadesan, and you can be in touch. I'll be more than willing to share whatever I feel about what you're thinking. Thank you very much, Dr. Nadesan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.